Hey guys, Chairman here. So about over a month ago, I made content for the Tressus Collectibles channel, as I usually do, for our Nikkei content block, and I handled the TD++ as I usually do. And I got a lot of flack for this video. Actually, I don't know whether it's in the comment section here or if it's just generally in the community. I got a lot of flack for this. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, appreciate Simu a lot, but like, man, he messed up with this one, right? And specifically, it was for this deck list, which is the upgraded version of the TD++. We start with like what the trial deck has, and then we try to upgrade it in a certain way. And for all the flack I got for this video, I just really want to say that it was absolutely deserved. This list is a nightmare. This list is a mess to look at. It is pretty crazy. It is 3 colors. It plays Mihara, which is a very complicated card to play. This deck is not something I would want within a 10-foot pole near a beginner. And for content such as the TD++, which is generally for our like more intermediate players, yeah, this kind of deck list should not have been on the deck profile. My excuse at the time, I believe, it was like the Nikkei trial deck itself was just like so freaking good already, and it was like such a good piece of it was just such a good deck for a intermediate player that like to upgrade it you would basically have to kind of go somewhere spicy and go somewhere interesting, and I landed here, but this was not a good idea. So I 100% agree with all the criticism. Yeah, probably should never do something this crazy ever again. But I do want to push back on one small point. And it's not really pushing back, it's more actually like pushing forward, if you'll allow me. I basically had some of the comments or some of the sentiment around the issues with this deck is that like, oh yeah, this would be like a horrible first deck, or like, oh, I'm getting into the game and this kind of deck, like, it scares me, right? It intimidates me. And I just want to say, like, yeah, obviously you shouldn't play this deck if it's your first deck, but you shouldn't be playing any deck like on the Tressus Collectibles channel if it's your first deck. Like, I don't think a single list on the Tressus Collectibles channel I would recommend for a player if it's like their first deck. If they're getting into Weiss for the first time, they want to build a deck or experience a deck for the first time, I don't think I would in good faith recommend a single list on the Tressus Collectibles channel. I'm going to go even further. I don't think I would in good faith recommend a single list I've seen online, period. Just like flat out. Like, there is not a single deck list online that I would be like, hey, if this is the first time you're ever playing Weiss and you pick up this deck, you're gonna have fun. Like, none of the lists are like that. And so yeah, I kind of don't want that to be kind of like the sentiment, and I kind of want to talk about why I feel that way and what we can do. Well, I mean, this video is going to help you build your very first deck in Weiss Schwarz if that's what you clicked in here for. But also, if you're just watching this, like, how can we better talk about deck building for Weiss so that people who are trying Weiss for the first time can actually enjoy the game without being really like kind of let down by the deck lists that the community has and the deck lists that are out there. And so let's talk about why deck lists and Weiss are, I guess, just so bad for newer players relative to other games. So the thing I want to talk about is that contrary to other games, in Weiss, the gameplay is linear, but the deck progression is not linear. And I realize my webcam is blocking the way here, so I'm just going to move out of the way here. Yeah, so the gameplay is linear and the deck progression is not linear. So what do I mean by the gameplay is linear? I mean that you start the game in a certain way, and as the game progresses, the game goes in one direction. Like, you never go back to the start of the game, right? So like, you take damage, you continue to take damage, you never go back to 0 damage. Most card games have linear gameplay. That's kind of how trading card games work. If I were to give an example of a game that isn't like a card game that isn't linear, it would be like blackjack, right? So like, at the end of a round, you reset the round and play starts at the beginning again. It's a non-linear gameplay. You kind of loop, right? But I would say that most trading card games have linear deck progressions. Like, as you go through a deck while playing the game, your deck goes in one direction. It never, like, you never reset your deck fully to the state it was before. But we all know that in Weiss, that's not the case, right? Because we have deck refresh. Like, you're at some point in the game, most of the cards that were originally in your deck go back into your deck, and now you have a new deck that's full of the cards that were once in there before. And other games just don't have this complication, which makes it a lot easier to understand, right? Because if you imagine if other games, both of these arrows are just linear, it means that like as you progress, you have like a certain expectation of what not only the game is going to look like, but also what your deck is going to look like. But in Weiss, one thing is moving in one direction and the other thing is doing loop-de-loops on a roller coaster. Okay, so as another further example, so recently I've actually been playing a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh!, a lot of Master Duel. I'm not very good at Yu-Gi-Oh!, but I do enjoy Master Duel a decent amount. I really wish there was like an online web client for Weiss Schwarz, but you know, that's never gonna happen. So I've been playing around with this Blue Eyes deck, which is supposedly very beginner friendly, and I mostly gotten the gist of it. Any Yu-Gi-Oh player worth their salt will look at this list and tell you it's not very optimized. I am playing a bunch of like random funny cards for fun, but I can tell you very clearly that there are cards in here that make sense just the first time you read it, and you will never have to think about these cards ever again. So the example here I want to go over is this card right here. This card right here. This is called Mausoleum of White, and it's a field spell. You can think of field spells as like just a card that will stay on your board for an indeterminate amount of time. This card, Mausoleum of White, there's only one copy of it, but that's because this card down here, called Spirit with Eyes of Blue, I think, its effect when you make this card, it says search your deck for Mausoleum of White and add it to your hand. And so basically, anytime you make a card, this card will automatically get added to your hand, and then you will never have to worry about this card ever again. It gets added to your hand, you put it on the board, and then you just forget about it. So it makes a lot of sense that you only need one of this card, and you play 3 of this card, or you don't have to play 3, but basically every time you make this, you get to this. Alright, so I went to take a shower, and in the shower I realized a much better example is just Pokemon Pocket. So I'm just gonna cut most of the Yu-Gi-Oh section out. But so Pokemon Pocket is like really straightforward and really easy to learn and pick up, because again, not only is the gameplay very linear, but the deck is very linear. It's like 20 cards, and you just draw until you run out of cards, and then that's it. That's like your entire deck, right? And so this was a really popular deck from a while ago. This is like what, Lycanroc Rampardos. I played this deck a lot, and I think this deck is really fun. But it's like super straightforward to learn, because the way this deck works is like you start off with a basic Pokemon in your active, which is Rockruff, right? And then that means you only need one Pokeball, because your Pokeball is going to 100% of the time search out your second Rockruff. And so either you draw the Rockruff or you draw the Pokeball, and the Pokeball will get you to the Rockruff. And if you draw the Rockruff, you can use like Iono or Pokemon Communication to shuffle the Rockruff back into your deck to get a different card, and then you can use your Pokeball to grab the Rockruff back out, right? So like there's like this combo that will simplify your deck once you do the whole combo, right? And then your Rockruff, the move, attack, Sense of Evolution, will search for a Lycanroc from your deck, guarantee that you get it, right? So if you have like both Lycanroc in your hand, you can use Pokemon Communication, shuffle Lycanroc back in your deck, then use Sense of Evolution, pick the Lycanroc back out of your deck, right? There's a lot of these like really inherent, easy to understand synergies and combos that will ultimately simplify your deck, and you will basically draw until you have no cards left in your deck, and then you've seen every single card and you know all the strategies that you can do, and it's just like really easy, really straightforward, right? That's how most card games are. Most card games just progress in one direction, and you learn very naturally as you play. But Weiss Schwarz, the gameplay does move forward in one direction, but your deck is constantly going through these loops and these, you know, different iterations, so it's not intuitive, it's not straightforward. And so deck building needs to make it easier for players who are still learning how to play the game. I just think that like we need to fundamentally change the way we talk about deck building specifically for players who are brand new to Weiss Schwarz or even brand new to card games, because it just has to be different. Like you cannot expect to pick up a deck in Weiss Schwarz and learn it in the same way that you can expect to pick up a deck in other card games and learn it linearly. You have to learn, you can learn the gameplay that way, but you cannot learn the deck that way, because the deck is, it goes in a loop, right? You have to learn it in a different way. So I have a few ideas I want to throw out in terms of deck building that I feel like will help players think of the deck in this way. So these are going to be kind of like deck building principles. We're going to go over the principles, and then I'm going to go over like a case example. And so the first thing I want to talk about in terms of the principles is obviously the ratios, right? So for Weiss Schwarz, you can have up to 4 cards in a deck. So we have 4, and then we can have 3 cards, we can have 2 cards, we can have 1 card, and of course we can also not include a card. We can have 0 copies of a card, which means that, you know, obviously we're not playing it. And so if you are an experienced player, and if you look at any decks on Trustless Collectibles or any topping lists, you'll know that players will experiment with all these ratios, right? They will play 3 ofs, they'll play 2 ofs, they'll play 4 ofs, 1 ofs, whatever. If this is the first deck you're building for Weiss Schwarz, or you're building for yourself or building for somebody else, I want you to look at these 2 middle numbers and I want you to pretend they do not exist. All right, 3 and 2 don't mean anything for a new player. 3 and 2 mean a lot of things for a veteran player because it reflects on how often we want to see a specific card over the course of several refreshes, right? So like, I know that if I play a 2 of, I will expect to see it this much often in first deck, this often in second deck, this often in third deck. And depending on when I want to see a card, I will change this number, right? Like, but like, that's not information that makes sense for a new player. Like that's just nonsense, right? And so I think for a new player, if this is your first Weiss deck, the only 3 numbers you need to concern yourself with is 4, 1, and 0. So 4 is going to be good cards. This is good cards. Good cards. And we want to see good cards all the time, which is why we run them at the max number. And specifically, not just good cards, but single purpose. You want good cards that do one thing and do it really well, and you want to run 4 copies of it and you want to see it very often. That's kind of like this is how you're going to understand how often you'll see a card and just how powerful a card is going to be in its circumstance, right? And so generally speaking, like if we think about good 4 ofs in Weiss Schwarz right now, like Riki is like a good example. So like a card that searches any card as like a plus. So like you play a card and you get a card for a certain cost without having to discard a card. That's usually a good card. It's a very single purpose card, and a lot of decks play that at 4. Another card that we can play at 4 of is like a level 0 attacker that has a lot of power, like whether it's like a 3,500 card that can move around on the board, or if it's just like a level 0 4,000 power cross turn attacker. Like that's a really good card because 4,000 is a lot of power at level 0, and it has one purpose. We want it to do one thing and one thing well, and we just want to play it at a lot. We just want to see it all the time. Generally speaking, what these 3s and 2s are for a lot of players is these are cards that are here. Let me. There are situational, but often is the best. Or we can also say multi-use. So usually the cards we have in 3 and 2, they are not as good as the cards we want at 4 copies, but they're often multi-purpose. They're often used. Their use cases can come up in multiple different scenarios, and so we are okay with seeing them more often than not because we want to use them in a lot of different situations. But if this is the first time you're playing Weiss, you're not gonna know what these situations are, right? There's just no way for you to know. And if you don't know what the situations are, you're not gonna know when to have these cards and when not to. Like this will come as you play, but until you play the game and until you experience it, experience how fun it can be for the first time, this section is just not gonna make any sense. And so I would just say don't even worry about it. Like just don't play any of these cards. Like you don't need these cards. These are all situational. That's the whole point. These are situational cards. You don't need them. They're only for specific situations, and often for multiple different situations. Instead, it's better just to use good cards that are single purpose and find those good cards for the purposes that you need them. So this is why just pretend 2 and 3 don't exist. Just play 4 ofs of all the good cards that you want. However, 1 is okay. 1 is okay. Why? Because 1 is niche, tech, but often important. So 1-ofs, like there are definitely a lot of 1-ofs in decks that are just they're there because of a very specific situation, but it's also a very important situation. For example, like a card that can bounce a character on your opponent's board. It's very specific, but that specific situation is very powerful when it comes up. Or something like stock swap, right? Like a card that can shuffle all your opponent's stock, or put all your opponent's stock into the waiting room, and then they have to put a bunch of cards from their deck into their stock. That defeats compression. It's a very specific kind of narrow window that you use it, but when you do use it, it's very impactful, right? And so that's okay. We are okay with playing one-ofs that are high impact, even for a beginner, because part of Weiss Schwarz is learning when to grab these high impact cards, and when to prioritize them over cards that are just good, but they're not high impact, or they're much more like generically good, right? And the thing with Weiss is because there's so much utility in Weiss, so much like searching, so much salvaging, right? You have like cards like Brainstorm that can get you cards from anywhere, basically. That it's not too hard to grab a card if there's one copy of it, as long as you know where that one copy is. And part of learning how to play Weiss is remembering where your important cards are, right? If you have one copy of a card, it's easier to track. Unlike if you have 2 or 3 copies, then it's like not as clear like where those cards are, right? So it's okay to have one-ofs in a beginner deck. Try to keep it like a few one-ofs, right? As long as they're high impact and important. So you kind of see the trend here, right? We want high impact cards at 4 copies, and we want high impact cards at 1 copies that are more niche. And all these lower impact but like multi-use jack of all trade cards, we just don't want them in a beginner deck because they just have no place in a beginner deck. All right, last but not least, let's talk about zeros. What cards do we not want to have in your first Weiss Schwarz deck? I'm going to say these cards are going to be kind of similar to the middle section. It's going to be multi-purpose cards. We do not want any cards that have multiple purpose, because multiple purpose cards are confusing. There are a lot of information. There are things that you have to think about, like there are multiple decision-making points in a single card. Like we want to avoid that. The best example of a multi-purpose card, and I might add this in post-editing, is Level 0 Mio from Hololive Volume 2, the Drop Search. That card is like, it's such a good card, and in a lot of decks it would be even up to like a 4-of, but for any beginner, I would never put that card in a deck to hand to a beginner, because that card asks too many questions. There's too many decision-making points. You can, when you play it, there's 2 effects, the top check effect and the search effect. So you have to order them in a specific way. The top check effect, you can look at 0 cards, you can look at 1 card, you can look at 2 cards. And then you can put 0 cards back on top, you can put 1 card back on top, you can put 2 cards back on top. You can put them back on top in a different order if you want, if you put 2 cards back on top. And then you can send any number of them to the waiting room. So you can send the rest, like 0 cards to waiting room, 1 card to waiting room, 2 cards to waiting room. There's like so many permutations of how to just resolve that one effect. It's too much information. It's just so complicated. And then you have to search. So it's like, do I want to search first and then look at two cards afterwards? Or do I want to look at 2 cards and then search if I don't like what I see? And then when the card gets sent from the stage to the waiting room, you get to search again. Do I do that again? Like, it's just such a complicated card. Players will learn how to use that card in due time as they play. But if it's the first time they play Weiss Schwarz and they pick up that card, they read it, they play it, they try to play it, they're not going to have any fun. It is information overload. So I would not recommend any multi-purpose cards. Cards should try to have single purpose as much as possible. Okay, so does this make sense? If you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments below. But yeah, this is my rule of thumb when building decks for brand new players. Stick with 4, 1, and 0, and just try your best to never include 2s and 3s, right? Because the number is just not going to help players learn. And then eventually, as players play and learn, they will naturally, for themselves, be like, oh, wow, like this 1-of is so good, I kind of want to see more. I'm going to bump it up to 2. Or like, wow, this 4-of is really good, but I'm starting to see it too often. I'm going to drop it down to 3, right? That just is going to come naturally. But it's not something that you want to give them like their first impression, right? Okay. So let's talk about, let's show off some demonstration. So this right here is the free run deck list that we have deck profiled on the Trestless Collectibles channel. Now, obviously, our free run deck profile was not meant for beginners, right? this was like the meta deck that I deck profiled. And I would, still not recommend this for beginners, but a lot of players, saw Freerin, they like Freerin, the anime, they wanted to build a Freerin deck, and so they basically copied this deck list, right? And for some people, that was like their first Weiss Schwarz deck, or even their first trading card game deck, and for all these people, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry if you copied and net decked this and thought you were going to have a good time. I'm so sorry. If you had a good time still, thank God, that's great, but if you had a bad time, I'm so sorry. Like, I don't know what else to say, like, Weiss is hard. Weiss is a weird game. Why do you get to refresh in Weiss? I don't understand. But as you can see, like, you can see some of the issues with this deck, right? Like, we got one-ofs are okay, but like, look, this is a 3-of. What does that mean? This Riki, which is usually a really good profile, why do we have it at 2? What does that mean? Why do we have 2 of this 1-0 Freerin alongside Fern? Don't we want to play Fern all the time? Why is there 4 of this brainstorm, 2 of this brainstorm? What do any of these numbers mean? Why are the events 4, 3, 2, 1, 1? Like, help. That it's like these numbers are so confusing, and there's so many effects going on. Like, for a competitive player, it's great, right? This deck is so teched out. But again, if this is the first time you're playing Weiss Schwarz, please do not build a deck like this. So I would recommend, if you want to play Freerin, you should build your deck like this. This is what I would give if somebody walked up to me and say, hey, I've never played Weiss Schwarz ever before, but I love Freerin. I would like to try Weiss Schwarz with Freerin cards. Hand me a deck, and I would hand them this deck. And now, so we keeping to the formula 4, 1, 0, right? We see a bunch of 4s, we see a bunch of 1s, and then obviously some cards are not here, right? So importantly, like, we got 4 of this Blue Weeds Himmel, right? This needs to go to memory for the effect of our Freerin Brainstormer. So just play 4, just get them to memory, right? This what do you call it? This Fern level 0. Okay, sure, it has the complicated top check effect, but like, it's a good card, and it doesn't do anything else on play besides that top check effect. So all you have to do is just worry about the top check effect. But the bomb effect is really great, right? It's a level 0. It will always remove another level 0 at level 0. It's a very strong card at level 0. We're gonna play 4, and we're also gonna play 4 of the event, so that we have 8 red cards, easy to deal with color, and that's the only color we have to worry about outside of blue. So really straightforward, really simple, right? Level 1, we just got the 4 ferns. That's it, and we don't need to worry about anything else. 4 Freerins, all the important cards. 4 of each of the events that the Fern can grab. Very simple. And then for the 1-ofs, you can see, like, 1 of events is fine, right? This is ordinary offensive magic. It's just it's really simple. Deal 3 damage. 1 copy is great. We can just, when we think like, oh, we need some extra damage, all right, make sure we gotta hold this event and play it, right? That's really straightforward. The Field of Flowers magic to like shuffle your opponent's stock back into their deck. It's a 1-of. It's great. It's like a very high impact card in very specific situations. Perfect 1-of, right? This card is the bounce. Perfect 1-of. High impact. Climax Swap, generally speaking, I think Climax Swap is a high impact card. Some players will play like 2, even 3 copies of Climax Swap, but I think Climax Swap is fine in the like the category of like high impact, very situational card, right? Because like the difference between being able to do Climax Combo and not being able to do Climax Combo, I think is like very high impact, right? So yeah, like this deck is like, if you give it to a player and they read through all the cards in this deck, like they will learn how the deck works. Like, it will make sense to them as they play and as they read. We got 4 copies of the Unnecessary Spendings Freerin. Some decks only run 1, some decks run 2. I think this card's great as a beginner card for 4 because you can discard any event or climax to just get an adventure magic. So anytime you mess up with your with what cards you want to hold in your hand, this card will just easily transition you out. And I think it's just a perfectly fantastic 4-of. Now there is a 1 card on here, or I guess I could say 1 card not on here. Some Freerin players might have noticed. That is basically in a lot of Freerin decks, but it's not on this one. There's no Fern Brainstormer, right? If you see here, no Fern Brainstormer. I took them all out. Why would I take out Dependable Mage Fern? This card is so good. This card, it's a double rare. It's such a powerful card. Look at this first effect. This ability activates up to 3 times a turn. When you play an event, look at up to 2 cards on the top of your deck and put them back on top of the deck in any order. Dude, experienced players don't even use this effect correctly. Experienced players will forget to use this effect and sequence it correctly. You think a beginner is going to remember a thrice per turn? That's crazy, right? This effect is so complicated because makes you care about how you sequence your events. Some events are better to be played to proc this event. Some events should be played after getting the knowledge of this top check, and then you play other events. Like, that's just so unnecessary. That's not how free run is. That's how free run is optimized. That's not how free run is played. Let's walk through how a game of free run should be played, right? At level 0, what do? At level 0, we want to get one copy of Blue Wheat's Himmel out and into memory, right? And then what is our Himmel and our Seri searching? Our Himmel and Seri are searching our Mage Ferns, right? And then once we get Mage Fern, we play the Climax combo, we loop the Flight Magic and the Lost Accessories Magic. And then we use the Lost Accessories Magic usually to salvage back the Ferns. We use the Flight Magic to go through our deck, get more cards. And then on the following turn, what do? We try to play the Ferns again. We try to do the Climax combo again. And we keep doing this until we get a bunch of resources. And at level 3, what do? We play the Free Run the Slayer, and we use the Pursuit of Magic Free Runs to bring out the free runs for cheaper, right? And then we blast our opponent at level 3. That's the game plan. That's every free run dream. If you could do that every game, you'd be happy, right? All the other stuff here is it's extra, right? So the Fern Brainstormer, it's just extra. You don't need it. It's great to have, obviously. Once people get comfortable with the deck, they can add it in and play around with it. But it's not part of the main game plan. The main game plan is like, I play Fern, I grab back Lost Accessories. Next turn, I play Lost Accessories, I salvage Fern. I play Fern, I grab back Lost Accessories. It's like the event loop of the level 1 combo is like the main thing to focus on, right? Does the Fern Brainstorm help you do the event loop because you can use it to salvage Brainstorm? Yes, of course it does, right? But like, you don't need it to do the loop. The loop is already part of the combo. That's like the first thing to learn. And then you add the Fern later once you're like a lot more comfortable. You're like, oh, I want some extra ceiling, or I want to get more, I want more information to work with my plays, right? So you do this later. You do this later. And now that way with this deck, you like basically start your turn with this Fern, right? This will get you the information. You practice with this kind of information getting before you play the other stuff. So anyways, I just want to talk about free run and this kind of beginner deck because I realized that I had a free run deck on this profile, I had a free run deck profile on this channel. It was 8 book. It's a lot more simpler. I would recommend that for beginners. I actually looked at that deck profile. That's pretty much an ideal beginner's deck, right? It's actually like a bunch of 4s and like a few 1s, right? But like, yeah, I know that a lot of people go to Tressus Collectibles, especially like newer players, because like we're one of the biggest channels for English Weiss and we cover basically every single set. And so, yeah, I imagine that a lot of people watch our content and want to like copy kind of our deck list. But I just want to say that like, if it's your first deck in a card game or in Weiss Schwarz specifically, I want you guys to not copy our decks and really just kind of try to do this. Or you can like look at our deck list and then try to make a 4-1-0 deck out of one of our deck lists, right? So our deck lists are going to be for like meta competitive players. Honestly, we do the deck profiles just so that like, cause like even with competitive players, they're not gonna like know every set, and so it's kind of meant for competitive players to stay in the loop on like what sets are bringing to the table. And it's not really meant for like new players to get into the game first. And even the trial deck is not really meant for like new players. It's meant for like beginner level, intermediate level players. And then the upgrade portion is actually, it's like a stepping stone between like, I'm comfortable with the trial deck, I want something more fun to play, here are some upgrades. None of that is meant for like, oh, this is the first time I've ever held a Weiss deck, like what should I do? So yeah, I just want to make a video about that. But basically stick with this formula, 4-1-0s all the way around. Play a few games with this. This is gonna be fun. That's the most important thing. Is what if you've never played Weiss before and you pick up a deck like this, 4-1-0s all the way, you read all the cards, you play with somebody else, you are going to have fun. I will guarantee it. You might not win, your deck might not do everything it could do, but you as a player are going to have fun because you're going to consistently see the combo pieces and the big piece, like the big splashy cards that your deck is meant to play, and you're going to be able to consistently do cool things that your deck was meant to be able to do, and you are going to have fun. And the more you play, the better you'll understand at tweaking these numbers and adding in whatever. But start here. Please start here. And if you start here, you play Weiss and you don't have fun, then I'm sorry. I guess Weiss is not really meant for you. I guess maybe card games are kind of rough, but like probably Weiss is just not meant for you. that's fine. But if you haven't tried something like this, 4-1-0s all the way across, super consistent, super, straightforward, streamlined to play, I recommend you give it a shot. All right, that's all I want to talk about in this video. But yeah, thanks for watching. I will probably try to make more content in the future. My schedule has just cleared up a bit, and so I'm excited to do a few more deck profiles here and there. But that's it for this video. Yeah, bye.